Welcome to the show. Now, throughout Iran, it has been difficult for residents to tell the difference between night and day this Sunday. Such has been the thick cloud of toxic smoke emanating from oil depots struck overnight by Israel and throughout into the day. 4 oil storage tankers and a petroleum transfer have been struck, in fact, with several more deaths reported. Iran's Red Crescent Society says some 10,000 civilian structures have been damaged since fighting broke out last Saturday, with the IDF continuing 2 more waves of strikes today. Now, as we speak, clerics of Iran's Assembly of Experts say that they've reportedly reached a consensus on a successor to the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, though no name has yet been officially announced. A member of the 88-strong clerical body says the vote has been cast and a new leader chosen, with speculation mounting around Mojtaba Khamenei, the slain leader's son. US President Donald Trump has waded into the succession debate, warning that Iran's next supreme leader will not last long without Washington's approval, also dismissing Mojtaba as an unacceptable choice, a stance Tehran has rejected as interference in its internal affairs. Let's bring into the conversation H.A. Hellyer, Senior Fellow in Geopolitics, International Security and Middle East Studies in London. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Hellyer. In terms of the Assembly of Experts, no name has been given. How credible is the process actually to announce this new leader?
Thank you very much for having me. Credible as any process can be that's taken under these conditions. The clerical body claims that it's already cast its votes. I think that they may be wary about announcing the outcome of that because, of course, whoever is chosen will immediately become a new target. Having said that, the protestations from the Trump administration may actually urge them to declare their chosen candidate. And frankly, the opposition of Mr. Trump to Mojtaba Khamenei is likely to work in his favor, not against him.
Well, speak to me about Mojtaba. How reliable are these rumors to say that he is actually going to be the next man in charge? And what would push the assembly to actually elect him? Is it a nepotistic thing, or is it someone who can actually take up the reins of the Ayatollah, according to them, as the successful successor to his father?
So, frankly, the fact that his father was the supreme leader doesn't help him as much as some people might think, because indeed it would be viewed as a type of nepotism in some quarters. On the other hand, Mojtaba Khamenei is known to have very good links with the IRGC, and the IRGC is really the strongest institution in Iran right now. Having said that, there are other candidates, so it's difficult to say with certainty who's been chosen. But I think we'll all know the answer to that pretty soon indeed.
In this kind of event, I mean, there's no white smoke which emanates from the chimney there in the IRGC headquarters. It's a very clandestine operation. But you mentioned that it's not a unanimous vote. How unified do you think the selection process is right now?
I'm afraid that's very difficult for someone like me to know, and really for anybody to be able to say. Remember, this vote is taking place under conditions of war. So the divisions that might have otherwise been leaked out during peacetime, that's very unlikely to be made clear at the present moment. There's likely to be a lot of misinformation and disinformation, and it'll be some time before we really understand what divisions do and do not exist, and indeed who the candidate, the successful candidate actually is.
But now these leaders are all meeting under the attacks that you've mentioned. And just in fact, a week ago, it was where the Ayatollah himself was eliminated by Israel. And that was about 30 bombs dropped in one particular target, which obviously indicates that if you can say even Mossad or Israeli intelligence, they knew absolutely where the Ayatollah was stationed. Does this lead to some kind of a distrust amongst the leadership of the Iranian regime? I mean, if they're looking over their shoulders saying that Israel could know our whereabouts and someone inside here may have leaked it to them, what is the atmosphere like amongst Iran's IRGC commanders at this very present moment in time?
So one can only really speculate because, of course, one would have to be there and be a part of that circle. But I think what you've seen, not just over the past few weeks, not even the past few months, but over the last few years, is that clearly Tehran and the Iranian regime is riddled with leaks, is riddled with informants. Mossad had very good intel when it came to deciding where to strike. Again, not simply on this occasion, but in last year's July war as well. So I think that that's something that the Iranian regime has yet to reckon with. And I think it will be something that has caused a lot of consternation in the ranks of even supporters of the Iranian regime that they weren't able to guard against this sort of infiltration.
H.A. Hellyer, thank you so much for those analytical points. They're very fascinating. And of course, we are expecting the announcement of the new Ayatollah to be dropped any moment now. They have been deliberating throughout the day, but they do say, at least the Assembly of Experts, the leadership body, that someone has been chosen. Thank you once again, H.A. Hellyer. Let's just move over to some news coming from Israeli state media. They say that Hezbollah is shifting tactics along Israel's northern border. Military sources from the IDF adding that the group is trying to force a renewed evacuation of northern communities, targeting population centers near the front line, also stepping up attacks on Israeli positions in southern Lebanon. Officials say Hezbollah is also waging a psychological campaign, distributing evacuation notices to residents in towns like Kiryat Shmona and Nahariya. Israel says for now, though, it has no plans to evacuate civilians, and that was confirmed by our correspondent in Jerusalem, Noga Tanopolsky.
There are no evacuation orders right now, but you're touching on a matter of growing controversy inside Israel because it's clear that not 100% of the projectiles launched by Hezbollah from Lebanon, which include drones and missiles, are going to be caught by the army. And the army, however good its air defense is, and it's one of the best, said today overtly that they will not be able to catch all of the drones launched by Hezbollah. And so what we're starting to see in Israel is serious complaints by residents of the north who feel that they're being neglected by the government, and also the beginning of demands by regional council heads and mayors up in northern Israel saying we need a plan. There are also financial demands, of course, because Israel yesterday announced that the market would reopen. In other words, anyone who works someplace that has a bomb shelter should return to work. But schools are still closed and will be closed for this whole week. So it's very difficult for people to return to work. And in the north, they simply cannot return to work. And they're demanding to receive unemployment benefits. So we're seeing something begin to churn. But for the government, it is incredibly important not to declare the north an evacuation zone, not to have to admit that it cannot guarantee the safety of those residents who returned to the north after evacuating and abandoning their homes and their communities for the better part of a year, or a little more than a year, some of whom still don't have their original homes rebuilt. So it's a bit of a political friction that we're talking about inside the country.
And this is all taking place there on the northern border with Lebanon. Now, speaking of what's happened there in the south of the country today, Israel now says that it has killed 5 people in that blast at the Rabbana Hotel in the south of Lebanon today, in southern Beirut. And this was quite a major strike because it was really in the heart of the capital of Lebanon. Lebanon first announced that 4 people had been killed. Now Israel's saying that 5 of them were killed and 3 of those were Iranian commanders. What information do we have?
What Israel says, it's kind of interesting. What Israel says is that this was a precise strike on a single room in this hotel in Beirut, where many displaced Lebanese have found refuge. And what Israel's claiming is that these 5 officers, Lebanese and Iranian, connected to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, this notorious branch of the armed forces in Iran, were meeting there to plan terror attacks, and that the Israeli army had intel about this meeting and managed to eliminate them in Wal Fasub. We haven't heard reports, or I haven't found reports yet, either in Israel or in Lebanon, of there being additional victims, additional deaths caused by this strike. So if that is the case, it would be not the first time that Israel has displayed really extraordinarily precise intel about the goings on of Iranian-linked leaders within Lebanon.
Now we're going to return to Iran because we have some breaking news from their state media. They have announced their new Ayatollah. It comes after a week of deliberation from the Assembly of Experts, but they have chosen Mojtaba Khamenei, the son of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, to head the Islamic Republic. He's backed by the Revolutionary Guard, and he is expected to continue his father's hardline policies at a time when the country is at war. Caroline Baum tells us more about the man taking the reins of the regime.
Iran has a new supreme leader, and his name is Mojtaba Khamenei. Elected by Iran's Assembly of Experts and with the staunch support of the country's Revolutionary Guard, the 56-year-old cleric has now been thrust into power, succeeding his father, the late supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed in U.S.-Israeli airstrikes on February 28th. Mojtaba Khamenei is a mysterious figure in the politics of the Iranian theocracy. Though, as the second son of Ali Khamenei, he is widely known, he has never held public office and has rarely spoken publicly. Many Iranians have never heard his voice.
And it's interesting because he never held an official role, by the way, throughout it all. So it could be that he has been playing behind the scenes. He could be seen as a form of continuation until they can settle their way through.
While his appointment is likely to be welcomed by supporters of the Iranian regime, he is poised to face backlash both domestically and internationally. Khamenei is widely viewed as a hardline cleric, opposing cooperation with the West and refusing restrictions to Iran's nuclear program. He is also seen as a continuation of a regime that has killed thousands of protesters in recent months. Khamenei has not been seen in public since the death of his parents and wife in the U.S.-Israeli strikes. As supreme leader, he is now a top target for the U.S. and Israel. U.S. President Donald Trump said earlier this month that he was opposed to Khamenei's appointment to the post, calling him a lightweight. Israel has opposed the election of a new supreme leader altogether, going as far as bombing a building where the Assembly of Experts was set to meet during their deliberations.
Let's get the thoughts once again of Hellyer, a senior fellow in geopolitics, international security and Middle East studies in London. Thanks so much for joining us again, Professor, because the news just moves so rapidly at this time. Mojtaba has been named as the next Ayatollah. Doesn't come as a surprise, though.
No, it doesn't. And I think that, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump's protestations really put his thumb on the scales when it came to this. There were other candidates that could have been elected, more senior than Mojtaba. Mojtaba is not the most senior in terms of his ranking within the Shia hierarchical religious authority, much like one has to say his father when he was first appointed back in the 80s after the death of Ayatollah Khamenei. But I think that in the time of war, you're going to get people rallying behind the figure that they think is going to lead them to victory. In this case, from the perspective of the Iranian regime. And Mojtaba Khamenei was known to be close to the IRGC. He served in the IRGC. And I think all of these factors put together made him the successful candidate. How long he will stay as such in office is another question entirely.
I'm just curious. I know you obviously can't tap into the mind of his late father and the way that he was thinking. Do you estimate that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would have actually chosen his son as the next clerical successor?
I have no idea. I appreciate that you said that I can't look into his mind, but I really have no idea. The reality is that I don't think that anybody would have been expecting this war even a couple of years ago. We do know that the former Supreme Leader did make plans for his succession. We don't know what those plans were. We don't know if he actually recommended his son for the position or not, or if he would have thought that that was something he shouldn't do. I think that it'll be quite some time before we have insights into the process that actually led to this taking place.
But this is all taking place in a republic, and this is the most senior clerical position. What kind of a response do you imagine from hardliners, at least the Islamic hardliners, to this kind of appointment?
I suspect they're going to be less concerned about accusations around nepotism and more concerned around who they think is going to be able to effectively exert command and control in a way that they prefer, right? So if he's close to the IRGC and the IRGC is increasing in power, especially against the backdrop of war, then it may well be that Mojtaba Khamenei is precisely who they'd want, because again he was known to be close to the IRGC, and may not want to pull them in or rein them in at all. I think that we'll see that over the coming days. We've already seen that the other institutions of power within Iran have not been particularly successful in steering the country in another direction. The Iranian president gave some sort of de-escalatory hint over the last 24, 48 hours, but that was quickly sort of swept to one side, where he indicated that Iran's neighbors should not have been targeted, that he apologized, and then he gave another message where it effectively made that completely meaningless. And of course, strikes have continued on Gulf neighbors over the last day or so. So it may well be that this is just a confirmation of where power really lies within Iran at present. And the strongest institution, I think by far at this stage, is the IRGC.
And there have been some suggestions that Mojtaba was already very much at the heart of decision making. So we pretty much expect the strategy to continue as it has done in the past week.
Yes, I don't expect there to be any change over the next week or so. I think that right now the Iranian regime is locked into a certain pattern, and that pattern is all about trying to make the cost of the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran as expensive as possible. They can't beat the U.S., they can't beat the Israelis, but they can make this more or less costly. And I think that that's the attempt right now, to make sure that everybody realizes that if you go to war against Iran, that the cost of it, the price of it, is going to be so high. As yet, they haven't shown that, but I think that that's the strategy.
And in terms of the actual movements of Mojtaba now, his father was eliminated after a strategic operation by the Israelis.
He was assassinated.
In terms of the actual strategy now to hide Mojtaba or make him not a target, because he definitely has now a target on his back, much bigger than it was previously. What do you imagine the IRGC is going to be doing now?
I think they will keep him out of sight for as long as possible. But of course, the question remains, what are they going to do in the medium to long term when it comes to that? He's going to need to show a presence in order to reassure supporters within the Iranian regime that he can actually do this job. But again, the situation right now, I think, is pretty existential for the Iranian regime. There's very serious talk around not simply regime change, but the fragmentation of the country. And I think that Tel Aviv is very keen on regime change. Washington, D.C. seems to be going back and forth about it. But I think it's quite existential for them. And their strategy thus far has really alienated even those that were neutral within the Gulf vis-a-vis the war in Iran. They've felt that even staying out of this and even trying to make clear to the Iranians that they would refuse to have U.S. and Israeli strikes take place from their shores on Iran, that didn't save them, that didn't protect them, that didn't halt Iranian strikes on Gulf countries. So I think that the Iranian regime is going to be in a much more isolated position than probably it's ever been before.
And then in terms of actually reaching out to those Gulf countries, we heard those conciliatory remarks from Masoud Pezeshkian, the president of Iran, yesterday. He's almost backtracked on that today, just saying that if we are bullied, we are going to be responding in kind. How do you expect now that they have a leader at the helm in terms of Mojtaba Khamenei? They're going to be reacting? Is it just, again, going to be the same kind of foreign policy?
I really don't see I don't see any change that's going to take place over the coming days. I don't think that really has to do with whether or not they elect a new supreme leader. I think it's got all to do with how the IRGC interprets the situation, and whether or not the United States signals wanting to take an off-ramp for de-escalation. Right now, I don't see any hint in the latter.
Thank you so much, Hellyer. We're just going to get some more insight with Nega Motavari, who joins us from the United States as an Iranian-American political commentator and journalist. Nega, thank you so much for joining us. In terms of your reaction, what is your first thought and your first emotion when you see that Mojtaba has been appointed? Not really a surprise.
Thank you for having me. I mean, still waiting for that official announcement, but this came to the surprise of some because the hinting from his father, the supreme leader that was just assassinated, was that he wasn't a desired candidate because he didn't want to have sort of this perception of essentially a replication of a monarchy where power is transferred from father to son, which was something that essentially the Islamic Republic had ended, supposedly, millennia of monarchy in Iran. But I think these are, different circumstances, the way his father was killed, the fact that Iran is in wartime and his son Mojtaba is essentially very close or favored by the military and security establishment. So this in itself can be an indication that those institutions, those very powerful institutions, the Revolutionary Guard, the military, and with economic power and security intelligence, are consolidating power, as many Iran analysts had predicted. So this could essentially be an Iran emerging out of this war, potentially even more hardline than it was before the assassination of his father, at least in the short term.
And just if we don't want to conflate the religious aspect with the political, I do want to ask, will those people who look to the Ayatollah as some kind of a figurehead for the religion in the country, what will they be thinking?
Well, his son certainly doesn't have that level of, following or religiosity as the father or the previous supreme leader, the first one, who was also the leader of the revolution. He also hasn't really had a front line and public presence when it comes to the politics of the country. I mean, his father was, before appointed supreme leader, was a president, or the previous supreme leader, the first one, Ayatollah Khamenei, was the leader of the Iranian revolution. So they came from both a religious leadership and following and stature, but also very visible political profiles or careers. So this is essentially a man coming out of semi-shadow, will definitely be overshadowed by the name of his father, although he carries that name. And again, this will be the culmination of the consolidation of power of those very powerful institutions. Again, this wasn't a one-man show, the Iranian regime. It's obviously it's a nation state with very powerful institutions, and some of those institutions are right now engaged very directly, front and center, in this war, in the retaliation against the U.S., and they will come out of this potentially even more powerful.
Now, just before this announcement was made, Donald Trump, he had been speaking about Mojtaba, saying that he really didn't want him because it would basically be a bad choice. That was Trump's words. I just wanted to take this to Hisham. How do you think Washington is going to be doing anything to prevent the succession taking place, or are they just going to be continuing with their attacks as per the last week?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, the Iranian regime is riddled with leaks. There are infiltrators that have provided targeting information, and we've seen evidence of that, not simply over the last few weeks, but frankly, years. So I think that they will be trying to carry out another assassination. But the reality is that this doesn't really change the direction of travel in terms of how DC has been approaching this war with Israel. The U.S.-Israeli war on Iran has been going on now for more than a week. It doesn't see any sign of reducing in tempo or de-escalation. On the contrary, the discourse and the rhetoric shows that they're not looking for an off-ramp. And I don't think this changes anything.
Nega, in terms of any kind of future diplomatic negotiations, do you think that this changes anything there as well? I mean, it seems like we want to be able to separate the regime and the Ayatollah from what happens in terms of international discussions, but it's almost too difficult to do.
Although I will say that the Iranian system has shown pragmatism and realism in the past to be able to compartmentalize and even do the most difficult negotiations. For example, during the 1980s war with Iraq, which eventually led to the ceasefire with Saddam, or with nuclear negotiations with the United States under President Obama, or now with President Trump twice. And so I don't think the path to diplomacy, the door to diplomacy, is fully closed. The Iranians are actually signaling that that is still their preferred method. But and also the conclusion of this war, whenever there is, in short term, medium, or long term, will have to come from mediation and negotiations, essentially for a ceasefire, as it did in June. But I think right now the most, the key issue is that the Iranians are not ready for a ceasefire, as they're signaling, because they think that if they don't inflict enough pain, which they don't think they have, to the other side, that this will happen to them again. And every time this war ends with a ceasefire, until the next time it potentially starts, they will continue to pay a price under the shadow and threat of that war, as they did from June, the ceasefire, until the moment this war started. And so they want to fight with whatever they have, shoot whatever they have, take a very serious hit as well. I mean, this is an existential or survival battle for them. But then the goal is to inflict enough pain and to spread that pain beyond their borders to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and they don't turn into, for example, the next Lebanon, where Israel and the US can just keep coming in every 6 months, every year, to mow the grass.
It's all a question of how much power they've managed to consolidate, it feels like, Nega. Hisham, Hellyer, what do you think Iran will be thinking about their next move in terms of the Gulf? Because in terms of now having a leader to unify under, does this also change the power dynamic?
No, I don't think it does. I think that the strategy of the Iranian regime with regards to the Gulf has frankly been counterproductive to the regime. In the run-up to this war, pretty much every Gulf country made it very clear to Washington and to the Iranians that they didn't want to be a part of this. They would not allow American-Israeli strikes to take place using their own territories. They didn't just say, we're staying out of this, they lobbied very hard against it. And if there is another war, if the ceasefire takes place tomorrow, or a week, or a month from now, and the regime is still in place, then I think Nagar is right. I think that they perceive that there will be another set of strikes against the regime in the future. And at that particular point, I don't think that they're going to be able to count on the Gulf staying out of it, because what they've shown the Gulf is that even if they have active neutrality, even opposition to a war taking place, they still will not be protected from attacks from Iran on their territory, and they may feel that the lesser of two evils in this regard is going to be to align with the United States in order to simply to protect their own territory. So it's really not a very good situation for the Iranian regime at all.
Fascinating take there. Let's just see what happens there in terms of whether it is good or not. But Hisham Hellyer, thank you. We're going to have to let you go. I know that it is all just mounting in terms of the news there. That was H.A. Hellyer, Senior Fellow in Geopolitics, International Security and Middle East Studies in London.